Jensen here. Tonight we are going to do an Italian fried pork chop with a lovely pasta that will have mushrooms, asparagus, spinach in it, and a lovely kind of cream-based sauce. We're going to bake up some sourdough. So just a yummy, yummy dinner. Let's get our sourdough flipped out over here. This is just a traditional loaf. And I'm going to score it up and do my kind of crisscross. Here we go. And then make it a little bougie today. This one's like been proofed up. I made it right before I left on our trip this weekend, so we'd have at least a good bread Sunday night. And do one more little. Here, we're going to put it in our Dutch oven that we have nice and toasty. I've been having it preheat at 500 for the last, 30 to 40 minutes, so it should be nice and toasty. I'll slide this guy right in here. There we go. Fold that out. And then we're going to put our lid on, and we're going to pop this in the oven at 500 degrees for 20 minutes. And then we'll take the lid off and we'll bake for 450 degrees for 20 minutes. Slide this guy in here. And I'll set my timer for 20 minutes again at 500 degrees. Okay, let's start on getting our pork chops made. I have a nice big pork tenderloin from our butcher box, and so I'm going to kind of cut it up into little loin pieces here in just a second, and then I'll kind of hammer them out and get them ready. But before we do that, so here's our big beautiful loin. It's about 3 pounds or so. So we'll slice them up, but we're going to make our dredge and everything for that, so that once I've got my hands on the meat, then I don't have to go back and forth and wash and clean. So let's get it whipped or made up and ready. I'm going to use about 2 cups of flour for this. And I'm going to put it in my big bowl here. And since we're going to do a nice Italian seasoning, kind of goes with our pasta base here, I'm going to get, we're going to use a good amount of Italian seasoning in there. So I'm going to use about 2 tablespoons because I want that to really pop and have that good flavor in there. And then I'm going to add in some onion powder and garlic salt. But outside of that, it's just pretty simple. So this is onion powder. We're going to do about 2 tablespoons of onion powder as well. And then I'm going to go with like a tablespoon of garlic salt. So a couple good shakes, maybe a little bit more, like 4 teaspoons. Let me grab a fork here. We'll give that a nice toss, and that will be our seasoned dredge. Our second coating, we'll add in some Italian seasoned panko breadcrumbs so that they'll have a nice, great flavor on it as well. Let's give this a nice mix around because we want it, all of those herbs mixed in. There we go. And then I'm going to mix up our eggs while we do this as well. I think 4 eggs will get me through this because it's a good chunk of meat here. And then once we have our eggs going, we'll whisk them up. I'm going to also drop our pasta real quick so it can start cooking. We're going to do a rigatoni with our pasta today. Let me give my hands a quick rinse. And then I'm just going to use this fork. We're going to poke each yolk here. And then we're just going to whip it until we have no more whites left, or like the eggs and the yolks and the whites are completely mixed together. You don't want any stringy whites because when you go to bread it, what will happen is you'll pull it up and then you'll get like this soggy part on your tenderloin, which won't cook up and fry up well. So we've got our 4 eggs mixing for our little egg wash part. Pretty good. Now, before we get into our next part, I'm going to drop our pasta. So I'm going to drop in a whole, I think we're going to use a whole bag of it today because I got my parents coming over for dinner. So we've got 9 to feed tonight. So we're going to use a whole pound. And rigatoni is kind of a bigger noodle. So once I get it in there, and then I'm going to give it, let me grab my pasta spoon. I'll give it a little stir here. And kind of shake it up just a little bit. Okay, we'll let that cook and come. I want to cook it to about a nice al dente. I want to leave a little bit of firmness to them because I'm going to cook it up in our broth or like our sauce. And I'm going to use a little bit of our chicken stock that I made in our broth as well. So I want it to be nice and like be able to have enough firmness to soak it up without it going soggy. Okay, let's open up our panko so we're ready for this. And then we are going to cut our our pork tenderloin here into some nice pieces, and then we'll kind of hammer them out. Well, thank you, Rondia. We appreciate that. So again, this is just a lovely pork tenderloin roast. It's one of those bigger ones. And so I'm going to kind of cut it into slices and then kind of hammer it out into slightly thinner pieces so that I can fry it up. But we'll have nice, lovely kind of Italian seasoned pork tenderloin. Torrin came down. He was like, oh, you know what you should make for dinner? Fried pork tenderloin sandwiches. And I was like, oh, don't have time to make brioche bun. I've got my sourdough I want to use. But we can meet you halfway there, and I can do, a fried pork tenderloin, but slightly different. I was trying to decide. I almost did a pork roulade with this, which I did a couple weeks ago, and everybody really liked it. And I hadn't done that one in a long time. But this was I normally like to do the roulades with the smaller tenderloins because they cook up a little bit more evenly and a little better. But this, I was like, this will make some perfect little fried pork tenderloins. There we go. But we got this from, our butcher box, and I'm excited to try it because I haven't tried. I had their pork, like their butt roast, so I'm interested to try this as well. They're different cuts. We've been kind of cooking through them. Okay, let me get my little meat tenderizer here. Now with chicken, I don't really tenderize chicken unless I absolutely need to. But with pork, I always like to give it a good hammer out because pork is not as tender as chicken, and therefore giving it a little bit of a little love right here makes it the finished product much nicer. So making it, we're not hammering it too thin. I don't like it to be paper thin because I do like it to have, a nice kind of meaty bit to it, but just down. And you don't have to hit it very hard, as you can see. I do give a little tap on both sides because I find that makes it the most tender. And you can see it smushes down pretty easy. There we go. Perfect. Let's get all of these guys off, and then I might trim off that fat on that one because the fat will make it curl up if you leave it on. Sometimes if it's just a little bit, I'll keep it and it's fine, but that one's a pretty long one. So we'll get these guys hammered out, and then we'll be ready to go through our first dredging, and then into the egg bath, and then we'll also add in some more panko breadcrumbs for this, and then we can start frying these off, and these will just kind of pair really lovely with our pasta dish, kind of. It's just a simple one, but it's a Sunday dinner. It's just always a crowd pleaser because I said, who doesn't love a pork chop, and who doesn't love a fried pork chop? So, and I am sure everybody is very, very happy. They ate through all of the chicken tenders and taquitos that I had made up pretty quickly. Ordered pizza last night for them while we were gone, and I think they're very happy to have some more home cooked meals on there. I always sit there and, you know, they after a while they always miss it. Let's get this again, nice, and about one more left to hammer out. And then I'm just going to go through and then trim up again these little pieces that we have some fat on, because sometimes the pork tenderloin has a nice fat thing, which is great for if you're going to do an oven roasted or on the grill. That fat can add in a bit of tenderness to it. But for this, we don't want it on there because it will curl up. There we go. Okay, I'm going to pop this in here with my hands. A quick rinse. And then let me grab another knife here. And let's cut these guys off. So I'm just going to cut this little thin strip of fat off, just because I don't want it to curl up on my, when I bread it. So you see how it's just a big strip of fat there? And there's only a few of them that have it that's significant that you need to get rid of. For the most part, most of them are good.
Yeah, do you make corned beef and cabbage for St. Patrick's Day?
I do. It's actually one of the meals that we always had growing up. My mom always made. She made it a boiled dinner. I've elevated it over the time to kind of be a little more than just a pot of boiled corned beef. I roast the veggies, but yes, I actually have a whole bunch of meals that I make for St. Patrick's Day. We don't just do like one day, we do like a week of St. Patrick's of Irish food, because I do really love it, because it's so good. My sister-in-law is from Ireland, so when my brother and my sister-in-law got married, they got married in Ireland in her hometown, and I got to spend a week there and explore the countryside, enjoy the food, and I love that. Like that just comfort food, like that English and Irish and all of those things, like the Germans, they have that just kind of like homey stewed comfort food, and I just love it. We're gonna add in our panko breadcrumbs. I'm gonna do a good amount because I want a nice little crunch in there. This is the side. Why did I add that in right now? I jumped and said, silly me. Let me grab a bowl because we don't want it in there for it. I'm jumping ahead on myself. See, we do make mistakes, but we can easily fix this. Is an easy mistake to fix. Not as difficult as that time I dumped in like half a bottle of salt in my dish. That was a little bit harder to fix. But this one, we don't want the breadcrumbs in here now because the breadcrumbs won't allow you to grip that dredging as well. But luckily, with a little bit of a ladle here, I can take off some of that top layer and it'll be ready to dump in there. There's me trying to get all ahead of myself. Okay, now we're ready for it. Use just one hand for this process so you have one hand to work and do other things with. There we go. And we're going to coat this up. Perfect. And see, now if you have all those panko breadcrumbs in too early, you're not going to get a nice coating on it. And then it won't cling on and hold well for your second one. But now I'll just be ready. There. And so we've got our first coating, and I always season up my dredge. A lot of times people are like, oh, dredge and flour. Season it up because this dredge sticks to your meat the entire time. Your second dredge is where you can lose a little in the pan during the frying process. So make sure you season this one up well and then just add your panko and whatnot to it, because then you'll have a really well seasoned, fried food. Nothing's worse than going through and doing all the work and then it's bland.
Can you go over the seasonings one more time?
So for this one, we kind of leaned heavily on the Italian flavor. So I used about 2 tablespoons of Italian seasoning in here. So we get that strong, kind of flavor profile. And then about 2 tablespoons of onion powder, which adds a nice, lovely savory note and will give a nice, good golden fry to it. And then about a tablespoon and a half of garlic salt. And then once we've got that first dredging up, we will add in our panko breadcrumbs that I kind of fished out the first round for. Let's get these last guys in here. So good amount here. And I will say pork tenderloin, it's one of those things that it's a pretty cheap cut of meat, especially I know this one we got from our butcher box, but I know at Costco, you can typically get that huge piece for like 20 bucks. And that could make a whole bunch of pork tenderloin, like chops like this. You could also do regular pork chops with it. So it's a different, this is just one of the ways you could use that cut of meat, especially if you're trying to be a little bit more economical in this day and age where groceries cost an arm and a leg. Okay, let's mix these guys in there. Now we've got our nice good breadcrumbs in here. And since we're going to be having probably several different batches here, I'm going to get my oil starting to heat up so that we can start to get these in. This is why, again, I keep one hand clean so that I have one hand to work with. I'm going to put a good amount because I'm thinking I'm going to need at least 3 rounds of frying here. So I'm going to put a little bit more than I would for 2 rounds in here. And then while I'm over here, I'm going to give my noodles a little bit of a stir. I'll probably check them here in just a little bit. Now, into the process we go. You know what? We're just going to top it off here. I had a little bit left, but might as well. Okay, now what we're going to do is I'm going to make a little pile for us to kind of work back from. We're going to go into our egg, coat it up, and then into our base or our dredge with our panko breadcrumbs in it. Give it a pat down. I always like to kind of flip it around a couple of times. And then boom, you got a perfectly breaded pork tenderloin here. Now, you can hammer them out thinner if you want, but for this dish, I wanted them to be a little bit thicker. That really allows for you to get that nice kind of a little bit more of that meat flavor. I know with Wiener Schnitzel, you typically hammer it pretty thin for it, but for this, we're doing more of a fried pork tenderloin versus a schnitzel. Here, and into we go. Also, one of the major kind of differences between a schnitzel and this is you go straight into a breadcrumb or mixture instead of like the flour and the dredge. So you get an extra crunch to it. And it's a lot thinner. But this be delicious. The only thing Torrin will be sad about is he won't have a brioche bun to put it on. I said, maybe next time. That kid, he loves anytime I make a fried fish, fried chicken, fried pork, tenderloin. Actually, the only thing that he didn't really care so much about, which I don't make often, is like country steak using like a chuck steak. Nobody really they want real steak. I think that's what the letdown is when they get it. They're like, I don't want to fry. Oh, if I'm going to have steak, I want it to be real steak.
What temperature for the oil?
So I'm heating them up on high, but after I drop them in, I'm going to turn them down to medium. And I typically like to fry it around a 350. So it's a nice kind of medium fry so that it gives it plenty of time to cook without burning it. And then we'll leave a nice golden color on it. Because I think that's the biggest mistake a lot of people make is they fry their food on too high of a temperature. And then when that happens, either you take it out and it looks beautiful, but then you cut inside and your food's raw, or you keep frying it and then it's burned. So go heat your oil up high, because once you drop your meat into that oil, then what happens is it brings the temperature down. So you want it to be a little bit hotter, and then just cook it over medium heat after that. And then whenever you're doing this dredging, and I always try to stress it, make sure you use just one hand. That way you have a free hand to kind of work around and use in the kitchen, because it's very, very messy. And growing up, I was always kind of taught oh, use one hand for the wet and one hand for the dry. But then the problem is your hands are still dirty and you have to go wash them between this. Leaving a hand free means, yes, you get one hand super dirty, but it still allows you to work and move around your kitchen and do things, which to me is more important. Now, if you don't like super breading on it, you could actually just fry these up with this first coating on it. It has great seasoning in it, and it's a very, very mild breading for it. So it gives you a little bit of a crust to it, a nice light breading for it. You wouldn't use the egg mixture or the second one, but it's a great way to give you that partial one, but not commit completely. And then you'd also use significantly less oil. Looks like we're going to be right down to the bare minimum here, guys. I told you there's quite a bit in that that pork tenderloin there. Made quite a bit of these. It's enough to feed an army, which is sometimes what I feel like I have here, especially between all those boys. I don't know what I'm going to do when Jack and Teddy are teenagers, because right now with Torn, a 14-year-old boy, he eats a lot. And I have two 14-year-old boys. I don't know what I'm going to do, because I swear Torn can eat more than my girl, more than the other four put together sometimes. Okay, down we are. Look at this. 4 eggs barely made it through, but look at that. Just enough to get this last one coated, which is perfect. And then our oil should be just about hot enough, and I'm going to check our noodles because we should be getting close to that kind of 10-minute range. Look at this. Kind of perfect timing on everything, guys. We've got our sourdough beeping at us. So get this in here. Let's get my hands and scrub up. Okay. Let's give these guys a quick, just about, so when I come back, these will be ready to come off. But let's get our lid off of our sourdough so we can move to the second part. And then our oil should be about hot enough to drop our first round in. I hear ya. Okay, so we bake this at 500. There's a handle for 20 minutes. We're going to take the lid off, and then we'll bake it at 450 for another 20 minutes. Look at our beautiful sourdough right here. Perfect. And then we'll slide this guy in here. And then I'm going to turn my oven down to 450. And I'm going to set my timer for 20 minutes. Okay. I'm going to get my noodles strained, and then we'll be ready to drop our chicken, or I don't know why I keep calling it chicken, our pork chops in for it. Let me grab my strainer here real quick. And we're going to just strain it. I'm not using any of this pasta water today because I have some chicken stock that I made from the other day that is just lovely, that I'm going to use as part of our sauce base for it. So I'm going to put our noodles up here, let them soak down. I'm not going to put any butter or oil on them because we'll put them in our sauce that will help them break apart, and we want them to be able to soak that flavor up. Okay, our oil, let's see. I'm going to drop a little piece of our flour in here. We've got a nice fry on it right when we drop that in. So I'm going to put our pork tenderloins in here, and then I'll turn the temperature down. You can see we've got a nice, beautiful fry on it. So I'm going to turn it down right to about a 4.5. So 4.5, 5. I think I can get 4 in at a time. So we'll get ones twisted right here. Perfect. Beautiful. And then I'll rotate this, have it up here, let that side cook. And while those are cooking, I'm going to move this guy right up here. Have that waiting. I'm going to wipe this clean and we can get our stuff prepped for our sauce. Just a quick wipe down. Okay. Grit this pan out here. And we're going to saute up our veggies and get ready to make the sauce base for our pasta. Okay. We're going to start with our onion here. I've got a nice yellow onion. I'm going to kind of peel, get the whole, outer bit off. And then I'm going to dice it up fairly small because I want the flavor throughout the onion or throughout the pasta sauce, but I don't want necessarily the texture of the onion. So I'll do a smaller kind of dice up on it. And that way it will work kind of well with our rigatoni. And we'll get those to start kind of caramelizing up. And then I also have a red bell pepper that we're going to use, as well as asparagus, mushroom, spinach, and some fresh garlic. So let me get a couple kind of smaller chops over this. Again, nothing, it doesn't have to be a mint, but just a little bit smaller of a dice here for this. And then I'm going to grab, I think I need another little bit of olive oil because I used up the last, got one right here. I'm going to add in about a tablespoon or so. This is a good sized pan. And I'm going to start heating it up. I'm going to heat this up over about 4 and a half. My metal pan conducts heat a little bit higher, so I don't like to heat it up super high. And my burner's already warm from cooking the pasta. So you don't want to have it too high or you'll end up burning your onions before you get to that caramelization. And then let me grab some tongs over here and we'll give it a nice little toss. And I will say the seasoning on the pork chops smell wonderful. They look beautiful. I'm going to give them a nice rotation. I'm looking, I kind of know when to flip them. I always take a little peek, but once you start to see a nice little golden edges form around them, that's when you kind of know that they're ready to flip. And we're getting a little bit of that. And then we'll flip them over and cook them on both sides. And that's kind of, with this, you don't need to have them completely submerged because we do cook them on both sides, which means you can use a lot less oil. Okay, let's get our pepper up. When I'm sauteing vegetables, especially for like a pasta or whatnot, I always go firmest to then softest and then driest to wettest. That way they'll each keep their form. So we're going to do our peppers next, and then we'll do asparagus, and then lastly our mushrooms. And then the final one will be our spinach, because spinach is the last thing you're going to add because they will wilt away to nothing. For my peppers, I'm going to do kind of thin little kind of slices on it, but instead of leaving them super long, I'm just going to cut them in half. So they'll be thin, but they'll be kind of stubby. And that way they'll match the shape of the rigatoni, because rigatoni is kind of a short and fat noodle. Here. Get that up. And then I think we're going to be about ready to flip these guys. So let me grab a spatula. I find it's the easiest to flip when you're cooking, is to put a spatula underneath, lift, and kind of turn it over like this. Using just one or the other causes you to splash, but if you can slide it up underneath enough to allow you to pick it up, then it's easier to do the turn. And you'll want a thin spatula for this. There we go. got that nice golden color from that onion powder in there. And then, of course, those Italian seasonings, but perfect. And then, of course, we'll slice these up. When you're cutting like peppers, if you cut them from the inside versus the slippery skin on the outside, you'll get a smoother, easier cut. And then for the tops, just push the stem out and you'll have the whole nice bit of the top so you don't waste any. Let's get our garlic. We're going to want to use a good amount of garlic because who doesn't love garlic? And then we're going to give this a nice mince up to add into our lovely pasta sauce.
Donna sent you.
Well, thank you, Donna. We appreciate that. I'll get these mincing up. And then, once I've got this minced up, I'm going to give my onions a nice little stir. And then we'll probably add in our peppers fairly soon. Let them have a chance to saute. Then our garlic, I'll slice up our mushrooms and then our asparagus in. I'll get stuff ready for our pork tenderloin to come out.
Brenda sent you.
Well, thank you, Brenda. We appreciate that.
And when you get a second, can you go over what you season the pork chops with?
Yes. So we did an Italian kind of themed pork chop here. So I made a dredge using about 2 cups of flour, 2 tablespoons of Italian seasoning, 2 tablespoons of onion powder, and about 1.5 tablespoons of garlic salt. So fairly simple for the first base for the dredge. And then after we did our first coating of dredge, I added in about 1.5 cups of Italian seasoned panko breadcrumbs. So we should get a good amount of flavoring throughout and a good crunch.
You get this question a lot. Do you meal plan for the week?
I do not meal plan. In fact, I changed this meal like 5 times the 30 minutes before I even started cooking it. I was going to do a pork tenderloin roulade for dinner tonight. And then I was like, no. And then I was like, I'll do a pork chop with onions. And I was like, then my son said, oh, you should make pork tenderloin sandwiches. And I was like, well, I don't have brioche buns, but I was like, I can do this. So I don't meal plan, but what I do is when I go to the grocery store, I buy whatever's on sale or what's in season, what looks good, what's, a good price. And I kind of stick with that. But for our proteins, I just started getting Butcher Box because I did the kind of the math for our family, and it's actually more cost effective for me to get my proteins delivered once a month and then have them like there, and then I can kind of pull them out and thaw them when I use. I tried it out. I wanted to see if the quality was still good because you know how sometimes frozen meat isn't. It was wonderful. We love it. And then I decided to do a sea to table box, which is a seafood box. We love it too. So I've been getting my proteins and my my seafood from there, and that's kind of, I just go and shop for vegetables and produce, and then I have my staples in my house. And when you have basic items and then just different spices and seasoning, it's really easy to create a bunch of different dishes because you can just sub out your spices or a certain ingredient to make a different dish. Because so many foundational pieces can be used for so many different cuisines. And so that's kind of how I cook. It's kind of what I'm feeling like for the day, or if I hear like a kid being like, oh, I'd really like this or that. And then I take those suggestions into account. But no, I do not meal plan. I really wish I that's something I need to work on. I need to, but it's not how I function. Sometimes I need to be a little bit more organized on that front. But I know one of these days I keep saying, I'm like, oh, I need to do like a planned cook-along meal or something like that where I actually plan up. I feel like the only times I meal plan are my holidays when I make these like same sets of meals, or it's like somebody's birthday meal or something that they really, those are the ones I'm like, oh, I've got to get this, this, and this for that. Let's see how these are cooking up. Just about. Beautiful. I'm going to give my pan a rotation. Get this part. And those will be done in just about a minute. I'll be ready to take my first round off. While we're waiting for our peppers to saute up, we'll add our garlic in just a second, but I'm going to work on my mushrooms. I'm going to slice them up, and then we'll do our asparagus. And then I think I like to do, I'm going to do the mushrooms before the asparagus because I don't want to overcook my asparagus in the process because I want it to be more fresh. And so that's going to be the last thing. Asparagus is a firmer vegetable than the mushrooms, but it is more, the tips of the asparagus are not as firm and they're delicate. So, and they'll cook up quickly once we kind of cut them and put them in the sauce. And nobody wants a mushy asparagus. Let's get our mushrooms. I've got about 8 ounces of baby bellas here. You could, use pre-sliced. I always buy mine whole because they last a lot longer. And I actually slice them, I think, a little bit thinner. Get more mushroom in every bite. It's my motto. And it's funny, as a kid, I did not like mushrooms at all. And as an adult, I absolutely love them. It's funny how we are when we're younger and what we eat now. I still remember one time, I think I was like 7 years old or something like that. And I just remember family, like my uncle was cooking like beef stroganoff or something like that. And I took one look at it and I was like, I'm not going to eat that. I'll make myself a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, I missed out on a really good meal. I had a peanut butter and jelly sandwich when I could have had beef stroganoff. That's how I feel like my kids sometimes are. That's how Evie is, I will say. Not my kids, Evie. Evie looks at it, and if it's not, like one of her favorite foods, she's like, that's what we're having for dinner tonight. She'll be happy. She likes fried pork tenderloin. Let me get our next round in. Get these guys frying up. But that's kind of what, I always, you can't, I feel like kids go through being picky eaters no matter what you do. But I try not to cater to it in the sense that I make the same food no matter what I'm going to make. But I do try to make sure that there's something on here that every kid would like. So I know that they'll all like the pork tenderloins, but they all like pasta or they like sourdough. Like my husband doesn't like pasta, but he loves the pork tenderloins and the sourdough. So he'll be happy with those portions of it. So there's always pieces of it. We always have fresh fruit with our dinner as well. So, you know what I mean? If I'm going to make something I know one kid doesn't like, I make sure that the sides or the other portions are something so that there's always happy kids that way. Because as my mom would always say, I can't make you all happy. Can't please you all. Never quite understood that until I had kids. And then I realized it's impossible. Okay.
You know what they say, a good compromise means no one's happy.
Pretty much. I know. My mom used to always say, and I'm from a big family. I'm like the youngest of 10, so big family. And she would always be like, I can't make you all happy. And I'm always like, well, I'm sure there's some meal that we could all be happy on. And no, there was always a dissenter. And I will tell you, there is very few meals that I make that everyone is happy on. Very few. I feel like the one meal is like steak. Everybody is happy when it's steak. But not if there's a baked potato, because Evie doesn't like potatoes. Steak and pasta, but then, Papa doesn't like pasta. So you got, there's always something. Let's get these, set this here. I'm going to have to do 4 rounds because I'm going to not be able to fit one in there. Okay, we've got our peppers, our garlic in here. The garlic only needs about 30 seconds to a minute to heat up before we add our mushrooms in, but definitely give it time because you want it to get that heat on there before you do, because the mushrooms will let out a little bit of natural liquid. Beautiful. And we'll get this, guys. Toss in our good mushrooms here. Again, this is about 8 ounces of mushrooms. And we're going to coat them up, and then we'll just kind of spread them out until they all get a little bit of space on that pan here. Now this is like my 6-quart saute pan, which I call it my pasta pan because it's so great for making your pasta sauce and then being able to throw your pasta in it at the end, because I am very big on putting my noodles in my sauce or my pasta in my sauce and not keeping it separate. Like we were taught growing up, you always had your pot of noodles and your pot of sauce, and then you would store them separate, and the next day your pot of noodles would be like your bowl of noodles that you kept the next day would be like one solid noodle. Got to put your noodles in. It makes them taste so much better.
I do have a question. What's the best way to keep your pork chops moist when you cook them?
Don't overcook them. When you fry pork chops, they actually stay pretty tender because it's kind of a high heat cooking thing and they're breaded. When I'm doing pork chops on the stove, I use Worcestershire, which has a vinegar base to it, and it keeps them pretty, like it breaks down the fat that keeps them moist. And then what I do, if they're a thick cut, I do a quick sear on both sides, and then I finish them in the oven, which allows them to cook more evenly without pulling out all of their juices. I'm cutting off the bottom ends of my asparagus because if you see, the bottom end is always very dried out and will give you a very twiggy, sticky part to it. So kind of trim it off. And then I'm going to kind of cut these. I'm going to do a nice little like slanted cut to make them a little bit pretty. And that way they'll go in, they'll pick up our flavor for it. There we go. Just makes it a little bit more bougie, but not really change the flavor or anything. It's funny how just a different knife cut makes the presentation a little bit nicer. It's like when I use like smoked sausage, instead of a flat cut, if you cut it on sideways, it just looks a little bit nicer. Let's get this a good stir here. Coat them up and flip them around. Nice. Once we get a good kind of saute on the other side of the mushroom, I'm going to flip these over, and I'm going to just sprinkle a little bit of garlic salt on these. The salt will help the mushrooms sweat out some of their natural liquid, which will help them get a nice quick sear on them. But I do like them to heat up a little bit on their own first. So just a sprinkle around. I'm not going to mix it in yet. I'm going to let it kind of hydrate and steam up first. And then while we're doing that, and get out some parsley that we're going to use in our pasta at the very end as well, and kind of prep it up. Give it a quick rinse. Parsley is a great finishing herb, but you don't want to add it in too soon or it loses all of its flavor. Before we go, we're going to head over there and grab our bread out, but let me see if these are ready to flip. Not quite. When we come back, we'll flip them. I'm going to rotate my pan, and then we'll be ready to flip. Slide this over here. That way we have a spot. We can grab our sourdough out of the oven. Okay, let's get my little alligators on. And beautiful. We're gonna pop this here. We finished it off at 450 for 20 minutes. And now I'm gonna slide it out of my Dutch oven so it can cool. You want to get it out because look, you have this beautiful kind of nice golden brown, but if you cook it too long, you will it will continue to cook in your Dutch oven on the bottom, and you'll have this hard crust that will be hard to eat. So you don't want to overcook it. There we go. So we have our gorgeous sourdough. Let's get this guy flipped over. We'll slide these under. Beautiful. Flip it under. Perfect. Nice. And it's actually the spatula I use for this is a fish spatula, but it's so thin and skinny, it's really easy to slide underneath it, which I find is much easier. Okay. Let's get our mushrooms. You can see they're starting to kind of wilt up now, release some of their lovely juices. Beautiful. Okay. Let's add our asparagus in now. Because now we're going to make our kind of our sauce for it. And these will essentially kind of steam up and cook and will get nice and tender during it. So you don't need to steam them or anything like that. The cooking in the pan, and then when we add the sauce, will make them nice and tender. So it's just a kind of a great, easy way to cook them up, especially with them being sliced down there. They'll kind of cook up nicely. Okay. We're gonna let them sit right there. Let's get some spices in here going. I'm gonna add a little bit of Italian seasoning for this so that it can kind of simmer up. And then we're gonna add in some of our broth, and then I have a little bit of cream and Parmesan for this. And we'll add some spinach at the very end and our parsley. And I'm gonna add a bit of Italian seasoning, around a teaspoon. It's like kind of light little shake over for it. And I want these spices to kind of heat up and hit the bottom of the pan, get that kind of heat on there. It will help bring out their flavors. Here. But I don't want to go too heavy on it because I want that garlic that we use, that fresh garlic, to really shine. Rotate this pan. And then let me get, while that's kind of simmering there, I'm going to get our parsley chopped up. So that we can finish with that in just a second. Slide this right up here. And I've got this. I'm going to bring my cream over here. So this is some of my chicken stock that I made the other day on here. So we're going to ladle some in that has some great flavor. If you don't have homemade chicken stock, what you can use is reserve some of that pasta water and mix bouillon with it. We did post a video of this on how you can make your own chicken stock. And all I used was some leftover chicken carcasses from our roast chicken dinner from the other day. And I just simmered them down for several hours with onions, carrots, and celery, peppers, bay leaves, some salt. So it has great flavor in here. I'm going to add in just a little bit at a time.
Marianne said she made your sourdough blueberry muffins, and they were amazing.
Oh, good. I'm glad. That is one of my husband's favorite muffins. He absolutely loves them. It's one of those things he'll eat like 4 of them at a time for it. And it's going to be in our cookbook. Because those muffins are a favorite for it. We've been working on it. We hope to have our cookbook ready, at the end of the month on there. We did a lot of good work this weekend on it. So we put in about a good ladle full of our chicken broth, which is about a half a cup. I'm gonna mix it around, add a little bit more. This has good flavoring in it, so I won't probably need to add any more salt or anything like that to it, but we're gonna use this as our base.
Do you add any vinegar when you make your stock?
I don't add any vinegar for the stock, and because when I roast up my chicken, I seasoned it with Worcestershire, which has vinegar in it. So it has already a little bit of that acidity to break it down, or it has lemons in it. So sometimes when I make my chicken, I have I do a lemon roasted chicken. So it really depends kind of what I have in it. Most of the time my stock, I just kind of keep it, it gets used within a couple of days. So I don't need a lot of acidity in there to kind of, for a storaging for long-term process for it. All right, let me grab a little spoon here. Add. Turn that up. Add a couple more. We're gonna let that simmer. I'm probably gonna add close to around 2 cups in here for it of our chicken stock with this. I have a whole nother container of it in the fridge. My husband's like, is that all the chicken stock we had? He was like, we didn't go through it. I was like, no, I have a whole nother container. Don't worry. When I make it, it's so good. We used it in our chicken pot pies that were.
Just don't want it all wasted on this.
Oh yeah, he's like, don't waste it on the pasta sauce. It's too good to be wasted on pasta. And his thinking, and I'm like, it makes the best pasta. He doesn't know what he's missing out on. I just think he needs to give the pasta a fair chance. He needs to learn to love it. I don't know how you can't not like pasta. Let's get these guys just rotating. This one looks pretty darn good. So I'm going to take that one out. And then let me check this guy. That one's pretty darn close. It's looking good. Got that one on here. Get these guys. Perfect. And now we're going to get our next round in. I'm going to see. I don't know if I can get all 5 of these in here, but I'm going to try. That way I don't have to do a third round. One of these is pretty skinny, so we're going to get creative. Normally, you want to make sure you leave plenty of ample room in here. Think I can do it? I think I can get one more in there. Right there. Look at this. Beautiful. I made it. Okay, we're just about to finish off our pasta sauce here, and then we can at least serve up our first round of food while we kind of finish off. So we've got our sauce here kind of to a nice simmer, and you can see it's kind of thickening up too as it kind of evaporates off some of the stock. The stock is also already nice and thick from it. What we're going to do is we're going to add in a little bit of cream to make it a nice creamy base for it. You don't need a whole lot. That's probably about 1/4 of a cup. We may use a little bit more, but I don't like to go too crazy on it because I find a little bit of cream goes a long way. Beautiful. I'm going to taste it, and then we'll add in some spinach and then our noodles. Delicious. Turn up our heat, get it nice and simmering. Because if we didn't already have enough vegetables, we need a couple more in here. It's always you can tell when my parents come for dinner because the variety of vegetables significantly increases when my parents come for dinner because they are like me and love so many vegetables. They're not like my husband who would be content on potatoes every single day. Potatoes and rice and bread. Okay. Now that we've got our spinach in here, and the spinach is one of those last things that you add in because they really do wilt in fast. We're going to add in our noodles. Don't worry if your noodles have turned into a kind of a group like this. I have a couple that's stuck to the bottom of my pan in here, so we're going to grab those in here. Just give them a little toss because they will start to soak up the sauce, and that is going to make them come apart. You don't want to coat them with oil or butter because coating them with oil and butter, what that does is it causes them to kind of get this nice coating on them that prevents them from soaking up all the flavors of the sauce. And you want the noodles, you want that pasta to really soak those flavors up. So we've got our rigatoni in here. And again, you want to cook your pasta to like an al dente or a smidge before so that they have room to absorb this extra flavor without getting mushy. Don't overcook them because you don't want mushy pasta. There we go. And you see how they're all just come and they've separated apart just beautifully. Look at that. Gorgeous. And it's just a delicate kind of cream sauce. It's not a heavy cream sauce because it's mainly a broth-based sauce with a little bit of cream that adds this nice bit of richness without going overboard. And that's, I will say, that's one of my kids' favorite ways is, you know, it's a kind of a compromise. It's a, we're not going to do an Alfredo every single day, but it's a, we can do a cream sauce that's a brothy cream one. We're going to add in our parsley here. We turn down our thing to a low simmer. And then kind of turn that in. And we're going to be ready to serve it up. Okay, let's slide this over here. Get everything ready. We can, let's actually, since I've had enough time for our bread to sit, we can cut our slice and have it nice and ready for this. Let me get first everything set up and then we'll cut that. Give it an extra minute or two to steam. For those of you who are, if you're new to sourdough, sourdough is not a bread that you can cut into right away. It needs a minimum of like 5 to 10 minutes to steam off, because if you cut into it too soon, it will be gummy. And it's not something that you can then just sit afterwards and let it steam out. It just naturally needs to steam off. It's an interesting way, but that's one where you have to wait, but waiting leads to being delicious. Okay, got this guy. Let me grab my little shovel because it's the easiest way to get this pasta up when we're ready for it. And see if we can slide this. We'll have to make a pizza. Get our Parmesan cheese ready for this. Okay, let's cut into our sourdough bread here. You can hear that nice, wonderful crust on it. Beautiful, wonderful. Look at all that steam escaping. Just a gorgeous crumb on it. I'm going to cut us a nice, you can see it's still just beautiful and hot, even after 10 minutes. And that's why I'm saying your bread's not going to be cold if you wait 10 minutes. But trust me, if you cut into this too soon, it would be gummy. There we go. It's very hot. I'm trying to, the outside of it is still hot. And if I'm saying it's hot, it's probably like super hot. But okay, guys. Let's see. Let me check this. I think we're good. I don't need to flip those yet, but I think we are ready to serve up here. Let me just slide this up here just a second while this is frying because I don't want to get burned. Okay, guys. For dinner today, we have our rigatoni pasta with mushrooms, peppers, spinach, asparagus, and a light cream sauce made with our homemade chicken stock and a little bit of cream, Italian seasoning. And then we are going to serve that with a fried Italian seasoned pork chop that we dredged and then coated with panko breadcrumbs and fried until nice and crispy. And then, of course, a slice of our homemade sourdough bread on the side. And then, of course, to top everything off, because who can have pasta without Parmesan cheese? Some freshly grated Parmesan cheese for just the perfect, easy, simple Sunday dinner made up in no time, guys. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us here. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I try to do live cooking shows every single day, kind of show you what we're making for our family and hopefully teach you guys something along the way. Again, we do upload all of our videos to the link on our page. So if you ever want to recreate any of these recipes at home, you can just go to our page and search for what we made. Our kind of our garden fresh rigatoni with our Italian fried pork chops and our sourdough, and you can always watch and cook along with us again. We also have a link to our Amazon storefront that has all of our different cooking gear in it. I've got my hex-clad pans, I've got my all-clad saute pan, my knives, cutting boards, all the different things that I use in the kitchen I have in there for you guys to check out. But again, thank